to the cloud. Okay, we're recording. Nothing like when I'm
Perfect.
getting halfway through. It's like, oops. We won't do an oops tonight. How's that?
Sure.
So, welcome everybody. It's good to have you. Good to have you aboard. It's wonderful to see some good familiar faces here. You'll notice that I have my picture as well as something that says Pam's phone. And no, Budgie, don't climb all over my phone. I came in today to turn it all on and discovered my speakers weren't working, and it's like, oh, okay. So, but we're good. If you have problems hearing me, please let me know and I'll see what I can do. Otherwise, we've got the camera set up here and the my phone to the side, and we should be good. So you're hearing me actually through the microphone here. So tonight we have another really fun project to do. At this time we're going to learn how to do basic brick stitch. And brick stitch is one of those go-to kinds of stitches. Last week we did peyote. Brick stitch looks like it's peyote lying down. So it's actually fun to do. It's not difficult to do. Let's get that out of the way. I'm going to just turn on my share screen here, just so you can see. Here we go. Okay, so what we are going to be doing, we're going to be learning how to create this little pendant. Now you can do it if you don't have cylinder beads. You can do this in round seed beads, okay? So it will give you a slightly different shape. Cylinder beads, if you'll notice, these are cylinder beads, this one here. And if you notice, it's, the beads are round, but the sides are straight. And so that is going to give you a different structure than seed beads. This one is the same size of seed beads. Both are size 8s. The seed beads they have this very round, think of round shoulders. So the sides are more round, and so it's going to give you a slightly different shape, but both are done the same way. It's actually very easy to do. We'll just take it over step by step, and you will have seen some of this stitching perhaps in some dangle kind of earrings. And they will frequently do this bit at the top and then dangle things down from the bottom. So let's go back to what we are doing here. Come on, off my beadboard, go on. And let me just switch you over here to my other camera. My budgie is getting so very, very bold. So these are the two pieces, which you've just seen. Now I've started another sample. This is using regular size 6 beads, seed beads, and you can see that it's, again, a very different shape. I'm not impressed with this shape. It's just sort of flaring out a little too much. But what happens is that it's a little less structural. I won't say stable, but it's a little less structural than using the delicas. So let's set that aside. You will need some beads. I am using the size 8 delica beads. I'm going to use another color here just so I don't have all these red hearts kicking around at home. I'm going to use red thread just so you can see where the thread is actually different, as opposed to doing it in the same color, just so you can you don't get confusion on the where the thread is. You also need a couple lengths of chain. These ones are about 8 inches each. Okay, so by the time you add it with you add your clasp and attach it to this, it's going to hang as if it's about an 18-inch chain, which is usually for most people at the collarbone. So where do we start? Well, we have our beading needle, and all you need to do is pull about a meter or 3 feet of beading thread. Yeah. This is not a fancy thread. Hana is just a basic beading thread. It comes from Japan. And you don't need anything really strong. It's a very small piece of beadwork. And there's no tension on it. So there's nothing that you have to worry. What I'm doing right now is very gently stretching my thread. When it comes off a spool, any thread does. Let me show you here. You see how it's got this curl? What I'm doing is just taking that curl out by gently stretching it. And what that does, it releases any tension. So if it's going to stretch, I want it to stretch before I work my beadwork instead of after. Otherwise, my tension could get very wonky. Okay, let's set these aside and put some of these over too. Zoomed out. Okay, so I'm going to thread my needle. As I say, it's about 3 feet or so. You don't need a huge amount. And I'm going to pick up 2 seed beads. I'm just going to move them out here. If at any time you're working with seed beads and you find you've got wonky sizes, like if one is really, really short and the other is really, really long, just set those aside and don't use them. They can be used in other projects like embroidery where it doesn't matter whether the beads are a little wonky to each other. So for example, here's 2, let's move these out of the way a little bit, that have, you can see that, a significant height difference. Okay, I wouldn't use either one of these actually. I'm going to set them aside for something else. You want to use beads that are consistently in height, especially for this particular project. The reason we call it brick stitch is because if you take a look, the bricks are sitting like they would on say a wall. You've got the rows, but then the beads are just slightly offset to each other as if you were stacking bricks. Okay, so the middle of one set of bricks happens to be in the middle of the one above it. So it's like stacking bricks. So where do we start? Well, first things we're going to do is that we're going to create our base row. And to do that, I'm going to pick up 2 beads like this, take it down my thread, and leaving about a 6-inch tail. You don't need a huge tail because we will tie it off and weave it in. And all we're going to do is to tie this in half, or tie it together so that the beads are sitting one beside the other, as opposed to sitting one on top of the other. You want them side by side like soldiers. So that was one tie. I'm just going to give it a double tie. Usually for smaller beads, we won't do that, but these large beads have such a big hole. It's easy for the thread to slip on these. Okay. When I bead, I tend to hold the tail in my hand, and that, because this is such a small piece of beading, that helps make it just a little bit easier to hold. Okay, now remember, I'm left-handed. If you're working along with me and you're right-handed, you're going to be doing the mirror image of me. Okay, if you have questions, by all means, unmute yourself and let me know what you any questions that you do have. Okay, so come on, Betsy, out of the way. So what I'm going to do, there's my knot. It's sort of at the bottom there of the beads. Come on, quit moving around on me. Right now, my thread is not coming out of any bead. So I'm going to take it and stitch up. My knot is at the bottom between the two beads. I'm going to stitch up the bead that's closest to my working hand. So this is my left, and just stitch through. And what I have, I've just stitched through that side bead. If you are right-handed, you're holding it like this on this side. Okay, we have 2 beads. We want to do a total of 8 beads across as our base. And this is called ladder stitch. We're going to pick up another bead. And again, make sure it's, somewhat, you don't have to measure it, but that is somewhat the same height. Now, my thread is currently coming out of the top of that bead. I want this bead to sit side by side like that. So what I'm going to do, my thread's coming out of the top, I'm going to stitch into the bottom of that bead. So it sits like that. I'm now going to stitch down, let's move that out of the way, stitch down the bead I just added. And I say stitch down because my thread's coming out of the top. I'm going to stitch down the bead that I've just added. And so it's like that. And what you'll see at the top are your threads going between the beads. And that's exactly what we want to happen. If it's a little loose like this, don't worry. It's going to tighten up as we go. So now we have 3 beads in our base row. Let's add another one. This time, our thread is coming out the bottom of that new bead. To put my next bead in place, I'm going to stitch into the top of the bead. Pull it through. It's looking like that. Don't fall off my finger. And I'm going to travel my thread over to the next bead. My thread's coming out of the bottom, so I'm going to stitch up that new bead I've added. So now I have 4 beads on my base row. Let's do it again. My thread's coming out of the top of the bead. I've picked up my bead. I'm going to stitch into the bottom of the existing bead, pull through, and just like what I've done in all of the other beads, I'm going to go through the new bead I just added on the same side that my bead is, or the same side that the thread is coming out of. Of course, your thread catches on everything. There we go. Okay. How are we doing? Is this making sense? I see people's heads down, busy beading. We're good? Feel free to tell me if you're not.
Good.
Okay. Good. Okay, I'm glad to hear that. Okay, let's add another bead. My thread's coming out the bottom. I'm going to stitch into the top, adding a bead as I go, and going back through the bead I just added. Okay. Add another one. This is bead number 7. We're almost there. And the last bead. Okay. So what you have is a row of beads. They're all lined up like little soldiers, all side by side, and there should be 8 altogether. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, just going to let you catch up there. just going to scroll through. Oh, everyone's got their head down. Ratness, good to see you again. Hi, Jaga.
Hi.
How are you? Marion, good to see you. And a few people I don't see at all. Okay, and there's somebody there, I don't know I don't see your name. You have long dark hair and glasses. Yeah, that's you I'm looking at. What's your name, please?
Hi, Melinda.
I'm sorry?
Hi, Melinda.
Okay, welcome.
Hi, thanks.
So, okay. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so come on, let's have a play. He's getting too bold for his own good here. Okay, so what we have our base. Let's look at our piece that we're doing. So what we've done is this row right here. This is the widest point, okay? And usually in brick stitch, you do the widest point and then your subsequent rows are able to decrease. And you can also increase, but a lot of people just use the decrease. It's very handy. So we are going to do the bottom of the heart, which is nothing more than a triangle, okay? It's going to be a triangle pointing up. So how do we start? What you've been doing is something called the ladder stitch. And that same stitch is going to be used when you start every new row. So we have another row to start. I'm going to pick up 2 beads, bring them down to where my beading is. And this looks a little bit different. It's the same stitch, but it's going to look a little different. So what you're going to do is go through those same 2 beads again. I picked them up, the thread is going through them once. I'm going to go through both beads again in the same direction, pull through, and see how they're sitting one on top of another instead of side by side? I'm going to use my needle and help them bend over like that. Okay. And they will sit that way once we get this next stitch done. Okay, so remember, I said it's good to see the thread that's going between the beads. We're going to use that thread now. So what we're going to do, these are my 2 new beads that are here. Don't worry that they're not quite sitting properly. I'm going to count over from my base row and stitch under the thread that is between bead number 2 and bead number 3. Okay, let me explain that again. Here are my new beads. Eventually they will sit one side by side like that, but we need to attach them to the base row. So to do that, we're going to be using the threads that are going between the beads, and we're going to stitch under those threads. So we're going to stitch not under the first set of threads, but the second set of threads. So this is between beads number, we've got beads number 1, 2, and 3. We're going under the thread between beads 2 and 3. I like to take it from and going toward me. So I'm going under the thread, pulling it around, and see how that is magically now going to sit on top. So they are in place. All I need to do now is stitch back through the beads like that and pull through. So there's the first 2 beads in this row. Any questions about that? No, we're good?
Good.
Okay.
Pamela, it goes between which one?
Okay, let me I'm just
Because
gonna go
I
to my
have
phone.
a long stitch and a little stitch.
Okay. What do you mean by long stitch and little stitch?
When I sewed them together, when I stitched them together. I think I
Okay,
did
let me, okay, I'm going to take this back.
flip your beads over.
Yep.
Oh, I did
So
it.
what you, yep. So let me just take this out and let me demonstrate it again.
I have to take all my note.
Okay.
Okay.
Don't be frustrated. If this is the first time you've ever done this, don't worry. Let me, okay, so I've taken those beads off. Let me show you where it is in the instructions here. Sometimes showing you a graphic is a little easier. So let me share screen. Okay, so here's where we have all of our beads set up. There's our base row. I've picked up 2 beads right here. And I've put those beads side by side. I've picked them up using the ladder stitch, and I'll demonstrate that again. And you can see the needle here going under the thread.
No, I think I did my base row incorrectly.
Okay,
So I'm taking all that out.
okay.
Okay.
Okay, let me just go back to my other camera here. Okay, does anyone need a review on the base row?
I do.
Okay, I'm going to,
Okay, hang on. Let me just take my note and then, because this isn't, oh, Vera, such a donkey. Dear, dear, dear. Did that do that? Not understanding. I should have known better. Oh well, that's okay.
okay. Normally these classes are taught in a minimum 2-hour format. So the video, you will have a copy of the video that you will be able to review. And you all will have my email address as well. So I've taken a couple beads off my base row. And what I have is a total right now of 6. I want to add another 2 more beads. So I'm picking up a bead with my needle. My thread is coming out of the end bead, the last working bead at the bottom. I'm going to stitch into the top of that bead. Pull through, and you can see how the bead sits one beside the other now.
I think I was picking up 2.
Okay, yep, just 1, yep, 1 is good.
Crap a doodle.
Okay, so.
Only at the beginning we had to take 2, right?
I'm sorry, Jacob?
Only beginning time we had to take 2.
Only the
The
beginning
rest of
time
the
you do
time
2.
only 1, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, the first of each row is going to be 2 at once. The rest is 1. Okay, so continue on here. We've added our new bead. This is bead number 7. My thread's coming down the bead that we've just added things to. I am going to stitch up the last bead that we've added, which was bead 7. Okay. Oops. And we're going to add bead 8 now. So I'm going to pick up the bead. My thread's coming out of the top. I'm going to stitch into the bottom. And then to finish, I'm going to stitch down the new bead I've just added. So now we have a total of 8 beads. And I'm going to turn this over so that my thread is at the top because I'm going to start stitching on that side. Okay. So I know we're all at different places, but I'm going to continue here so that as we do this, we'll play catch up. Okay, so I'm starting a brand new row and I'm going to be doing another set of ladder stitches. For this time, remember it's at the beginning of the row, I'm picking up 2 beads. I'm going to bring them down to my beadwork. Okay, and I'm going to go through those 2 beads again. So my thread's coming out the top. I'm going to stitch into the bottom. And eventually I want them to sit like little soldiers, one beside the other. I'm going to help them, but they'll stay in place once I take the next step. So take a look at what I've got here. These 2 beads hanging off the end are the new ones. I've got beads 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to go under the thread facing toward me between beads 2 and 3. I'm going to pull through. And if the beads don't want to sit like that, help them. Just, you are in charge of the beads, they're not in charge of you. So what you can do is just use your needle and help them sit side by side. And then to get our needle in place, I'm going to stitch up the bead again. And notice I'm going to, I think you can see a little bit there. Let's see if I can. Okay.
Okay, hang on.
Okay, so I'm ready to stitch back up through the bead. There is the cross thread, just under there. I don't want to go under that cross thread again. So my thread is going up on the other side of these threads.
So when we turn, Pamela,
Yeah.
we go into the stitch between seed.
Between bead 2 and 3. And
okay, we do that.
And what happens, you'll notice it's sitting inside a little bit. Okay, you want to make sure it's over. This is what we call a decrease. Okay. The rest of this row is much easier, I promise, because all you're going to do is pick up a bead, 1 bead, not 2, and I'm going to go under the thread in the next in line, like that.
Okay, how do we get the first ones to sit flat again?
You mean like side by side?
Yes.
Just use your needle and help them in place.
Okay, and where do we stitch?
You're going to stitch between beads.
Yeah, did that.
2 and 3,
And
under the thread.
Yes.
And then back up the bead.
Back up the first, or the bead
back up the bead that's right above where your thread's coming out.
Okay.
Yeah, that same bead.
Okay.
Okay. The next stitch, I've picked up a bead here. It's further down my thread so you can't see it. But what I'm going to do is now stitch under the next thread in my base row. So these two top ones are the ones we've just added. And I'm going to stitch under the thread as you're going along. Remember, if you're right-handed, you're seeing it like this. Okay, so stitch under, and I like to go toward me, pull it up, and there's my bead. It sits there in place, and I'm going to stitch back up that brand new bead. And that puts it in place and secures it.
Just keep doing that.
Okay, and we're going to continue along the same way. I've picked up a bead, there it is. I'm going under the thread of the next set of beads in the base row. I'm going to pull through. There is my fourth bead in place, and I'm going to stitch up the thread, or up that bead, sorry. And we're going to do that all the way along until we have 7 beads. Okay, so I have 2, 4, 5. Oh. Okay, and again, I'm on bead 2, 4, 5, 6. I'm going under the thread of the next bead in the row on the base row.
Don't forget to do your picks, huh?
Pulling through toward me.
Yeah.
And going back up that bead.
Okay, here's mine.
And our last one, I've picked up a bead. I'm going under the thread of the last set, like that. Pull through, and then stitch up that bead again. So that row is now finished. And as you can see, it's done a decrease on the base row. It's not quite as wide as it was. Okay, let's turn this around. We're going to turn our work. Rather than stitch backwards, it's easier to turn our work and keep stitching in the same direction. I'm just seeing how everyone's doing here. Okay. Okay, so now we're back at where we need to start a new row. And we're going to do the very same thing as what we did when we started row 2. So we're on row 3. Let's put this back into, let's see what a little bit. Okay. Okay, so again, we're doing this at the beginning of the same as each row. Sorry, the words are disappearing on me. So I have picked up 2 beads. I'm going to take the beads down to the beadwork like that. And I'm going to stitch in those same 2 beads in the same direction. So in other words, from bottom to top. Pull through, and eventually they will sit side by side so that there's more like this, but remember, you can help them move. And just like what we did before, we're going to go under the thread between beads 2 and 3 of the row we've just finished. If we went under the first thread, we would have an overhang. So if you find it overhangs, that just means you haven't gone under the right thread. Go ahead and pull it back and do it again. And if your beads sort of sit like that and not quite lined up, not to worry, use your needle and help them go into place like that. And to finish the stitch, just stitch back up that new bead that's in place.
Okay, so turning, we pick up 2
Yes,
and we go between the second and the third bead.
yes, just like we did in the previous row. And the reason we turn the work is rather than stitching it backwards.
And then we go back up the second bead.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And then what we're going to do is finish this row the very same way we did that bead all on the previous row. So you pick up a bead, go under the next thread, pull through, and back up your new bead. So this particular row, row number 3, is going to have 6 beads.
Okay, Pamela, just so that you know, this is not fun yet.
I'm sorry, are you gritting your teeth?
No, I'm just, ugh.
Give yourself time to learn. It's okay. Give yourself time to learn. It's all right. If you know what, if it was always so easy, there wouldn't be half the pleasure in learning and able to accommodate, you know, able to do something. So
Oh
you're
my
good.
goodness, Pamela, what drugs are you on?
Pardon?
Good grief.
Okay, I've got my budgie on my hand. Come on, budgie.
Okay, so this one goes under here.
One of the things is that I can't see you. That's part of the problem with virtual classes. Otherwise, I would be sitting with you and helping you and hand over hand and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, at some point, the world is going to let us do that again.
You know what? This is great though. And I say that because us old people need to sort of get the brain working. And learning a new skill is supposed to keep Alzheimer's at bay.
Well, you know, it's good to keep
It's
learning
true.
stuff. As I said, you know, when I came on and turned on my computer, it said my speakers weren't working. And it's like, oh no, I hadn't planned on becoming a
So how many
tech.
beads are we supposed to have on
You're
this
going to
row?
use about a total of 50 beads.
6 beads.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, on this row, 6 beads. Yeah. Okay, so I've got 4 in place. Let's finish the row. You guys are doing great. Be kind to
Yeah.
yourself. It's okay.
Yes. Okay. So we pick up 2 and we turn around the same way, right?
Yes, always on this at the beginning of each row. That's what you're going to do. So there is my last one in place for this row. And again, rather than stitching backwards, I'm going to turn my piece so I can keep stitching in the same direction. I have a feather on my bead. Okay. I know who's been around. Okay, so pick up 2 beads. I'm going to bring them down to my beadwork. And I'm going to stitch through those 2 beads again. From the bottom to the top.
Now, when everything is said and done,
Yep.
are we going to be stitching like through them again to kind of hold them in place?
No, no, you won't need to.
Okay.
Are your beads, are they holding together like as a solid piece of beadwork?
Yes, but you may not need to, but we may need.
Well, it's part of getting used to beadwork is tension as well.
Yes, that's my thing.
Tension, you know, you get used to
Everything
it.
long and tight.
Well, it's better to be a little on the tight side than the loose side. So here I've put my 2 beads together. I'm going to stitch under the thread between beads 2 and 3. Okay. Same way we started the other row. Don't worry if it's not totally wonky like that. Use your needle and help put the beads in place like that. And then back up the bead that's directly above your thread. And then we do brick stitch along the rest of the row. So as you do this, each row is going to have 1 less. When we get to where it's only 2 in a row, our last one is really easy to do because that will finish the triangle. And you are most of the way done. Okay, so that row had 5. I'm going to turn, start another new row with 2 beads again. Bring it down to my beadwork. Go through those 2 beads again. Go through. Close up any gaps that are there, it's okay. Go under the thread between beads 2 and 3. Pull your beads around.
Because I'm using
Sorry?
seed beads.
Now, if you are using seed beads, you're going to have it's going to be a little more wonky on you.
Yeah.
Because that is the nature of seed beads, because of the roundness of it. It does require a little more patience. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm using normal seed bead. I don't have Delica.
Okay.
That's okay. Seed beads are fine.
Yeah,
Seed
it's
beads
coming
are
out
fine.
good.
You're going to get a different texture. That's all.
Okay, I'm at my 2 now. So
Okay, let me catch up. Hold on. You've been zipping along. That's good.
I don't know about that.
Hey, if you're at 2, you're doing well. So let me just get to that point.
I swept my floor the other day, and between beading and chainmail, oh my goodness.
You have enough for another project. Well, when you have things like chainmail, even metal beads, and you're walking around in your bare feet or sock feet, you can tell really quick where those rings are, especially if they're open rings.
Oh yes.
Yes. Okay.
I dropped the needle and I couldn't find it.
Oh. Okay, so here I am starting another row. And again, just help your beads in place and go back up.
Okay, so are you on 2?
Just about.
Okay.
Just about.
Can you slide over to there we go. Good.
Sorry about that.
Okay, no, that's fine.
I try to rest my arm on the side of the bead mat here, but okay, so now I'm at 3.
2,
Last one.
2.
So when you have only 2, it's just the 2 that you're putting on at the beginning. Bring it around. And this time, yeah, you're still going between beads 2 and 3.
Are you supposed to go through the 2 beads again?
Yes.
Oh crap,
Yep.
I haven't been doing that. Maybe that's my problem.
It will set up properly. What you want to make sure is that you do have thread going between the 2 beads.
Or
Okay.
is that on every row or just this row?
I'm sorry?
Is that on every row or just this row?
Every row.
Every row.
Oh,
Every row.
okay.
Okay.
I go for
So I'm going to stitch back up this bead.
more down and go
If
back.
they are sitting in place properly and that there's thread between the two beads that you can go on to, or the stitch under, it's okay. There is more than one way to do many of the stitches.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the last row, this is the bottom of the heart, so we're here now.
Okay.
This last bead,
Oh, okay, okay.
okay, I have my thread coming up one bead like that. I've got my bead on here. I'm just going to go down the other bead.
Okay.
And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to travel through
Yeah.
all of those side beads.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to hold that there so you guys get in place where you are, because then we can do the top of the heart. Actually, you know, we're actually got very few beads to put on now.
Oh, jumping Jupiter.
Yeah.
I happy.
So what you can do, just as an aside for other things that you want to do, what you can do a little loop of teeny tiny beads, come down, and then you can start putting dangles on stuff. And you can create all kinds of earrings doing that. Okay, so once you learn some of these techniques, going from one design to another isn't that far-fetched. Okay, so I've put my last bead on, my thread has come up one side, I'm going down the other, and I'm going to pull through. And my last bead sits on its side like that.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
It's not sitting straight.
It's not straight, it's sitting on its side.
Side.
And
Okay.
that way it finishes what that's all about. Okay. So there's the bottom of our heart. Don't worry about the tail thread. We're going to be using that, we're going to be tying off our threads together, but not right now. So you can just move that out of the way. So now we are here. So we've got the bottom of our heart done. We're now going to add the two little bumps that are on the top of the heart, like right here. And you'll notice that we have a space in between the two bumps.
Can
And
you
that,
move it over to, sorry, Pamela, can you move it? Yeah, perfect. Okay.
let me get this out of the way. Come on.
I
move.
got my people on the side and I don't know how to make them up top.
Oh, I see. Yes. Okay. Actually, if you grab the bar at the top, where after all the people, you can actually just move it around.
Speaker view.
Huh?
Speaker view.
Well, no, you can go on speaker view, but what you can do,
No, you know what? Let's just leave it.
let's leave it. Yeah.
Yeah, just.
Okay.
you
So
move
let's
it.
continue.
Yes.
We're not going to worry about the tail thread at this point. So now we want to add the first of our bumps. Okay, so we're going to concentrate on this right here. So what we're going to do, put it back in our hands, just pull the tail thread out of the way. We're going to start just like what we've done all the other times, picking up two beads. Pull them down. Go through those two beads again. And we're going to stitch between, again, beads number 2 and 3 under the thread. And don't worry about the tail thread, just there. Just move it out of the way. So it's like that. Pull through. Help put your beads in place. And go back up that bead where your thread is coming out. Okay, we're going to add one more bead. And again, under the thread, right beside it, pull through and back up the bead. Okay. There, that is this row right here that we've just done. Turn your work so that you're not stitching backwards. There's the tail thread, just keep it out of the way, it's okay. This row is going to have only 2 beads. So you pick them up, bring them down to the beadwork, go through those beads again. Help it not get tangled around the beadwork and anything else. And again, between beads 2 and 3. So this looks right now, it looks very much like what it looked like down here. You're just doing another point. And if any of your beads need to be helped into place, go ahead and help them. Okay, we're now ready to do the last bead on this bump, and we're going to do it just like what we did down here. I'm going to turn my work. My thread is coming out of this bead. I'm going to go down this bead. Now this is where we're going to travel. I'm going to take the beads, my needle, down those 3 beads like that. Okay.
And the last one also going to sit sideways.
Yeah, it's going to sit sideways.
Okay.
So when I pull this through, that's going to sit sideways. You can help it in place. And you'll notice my thread has just gone past the bead in my base row. The reason it's doing that because I want to move my thread over and take it up this bead right here so that we can put our bump in this section. So back up. Oops, don't let it fall out. Give it a good tug because you want this bead to stay tight. And it will tighten once as we do the other stitching. Okay. Now, I think you can see where we're going with this. We're going to recreate another bump on this side of the heart. So, do what we've done all along, pick up 2 beads. Bring our beadwork, bring it down to the beadwork and go through those 2 beads again. Snug it down if you need to. And this time we're going to, okay, so we're not going to go under this thread. We're going to go under this one. So it's hard to count beads 2 and 3. But we're going to go under that thread right there. Okay? And again, just snug it down. It's pretty loose. And again, help your beads go in place. And back up that bead. And I do keep my beadwork pretty tight. So it's, it's okay. This is a small piece of beading. In some things, too tight a tension is too much, but in this particular case, it's not. Okay, last row or last bead in this.
How many beads do we go over for the next hump?
For the next one, you want to make sure you have an empty space. So you're going to stitch between bead 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You're going to stitch between bead 6 and 7. Okay, last bead in place for this row.
Okay, well, I'm
Under the thread.
doing it backwards.
Pull through and back up the bead. Okay. And there's the start of that other heart bump. Turn your work. Pick up 2 beads. Bring it down. And don't do what I just did and create a knot. Okay, there it is. Yeah. Okay. So these 2 beads will be the row for this. We're going to stitch under, again, beads 2 and 3, between the thread between those 2 beads, pull through. Help your beads in place. Like that. Whoops. And stitch back up that last bead. And you'll notice if you have sort of like over here, this bead is a little lopsided, just use your needle and help put it back in place. Okay. So I've got my last bead to put on. I'm coming up this bead. Take it back here, so let me focus. There we go. Actually, I found I can make it focus. There we go. Now it'll stay in focus. All these things you learn about technology as you go along. Okay, so my thread is coming out that side. I'm going to go down this side. And I'm just going to take it to the base row like that. That, in effect, finishes the pendant. So I'll just wait a moment, let some of you catch up. Okay. I know we're almost at 7:30, so I won't keep you. Now, what I want to do is to go from here to where my thread is. One of the things I can do is just go all the way down and back up along the edges. And that's actually a good idea because that helps keep your edges in line. So all I'm going to do, my thread is coming out there. I'm just going to go down all of these beads, get my needle in there, okay? Travel all the way down like that. Pull through, and then do a U-turn. Go through this bottom bead here, and then back up the other side. And what that does is it does help form you know, the edges a little bit better if you find it's a little on the wonky side. Okay, so what we have now, we've brought our working thread over to where our tail thread is, and everything is in place. I'm going to take my needle off, and what I'm going to do to finish is just tie these 2 threads together. And I'm going to just do a simple overhand knot or double knot. So there's 1 knot, pull it tight, and then another knot. Don't worry if it's a surgeon's knot, it's not critical at this point. The surgeon's knot is used more in other kinds of beading. Okay. The thread has been finished off like that. In any beadwork, you do want to bury your thread. I do not like to cut my thread where the knot is in case it comes undone. So to do this, I'm just going to, and you don't have to put both threads into the same needle if you don't want to. Depending on your needle, sometimes it lets you, sometimes it won't. So let's see if I can make it work. Almost, come on, get in there. Okay, so to bury your thread, you've got your thread coming out there, there's where your knot. I'm just going to take it down a few beads. I know it's not going to fall apart because I've tied it well, and I've just pulled it through. And if you need to shape it, go ahead and shape it. I've just traveled through the beads, and now I will cut this. And you want to cut it nice and close to the beadwork. There's the heart. Okay, how do we get it to hang? Well, part of what you need are those 2 pieces of chain. And I've already added a jump ring to one end and a lobster clasp and jump ring to the other side. So eventually those 2 pieces will come together. The other ends of my chain though, I'm going to attach to jump rings, and they're going to go through these 2 top beads, and they will fit not just these kind of beads, but it'll also fit through a size, around size 8. These are 6mm beads. They're not sterling, they're just a base metal. So to open and close the jump ring, I have opened this, but let me close it so you can see. When you get a jump ring, they look like that. You get 2 pairs of pliers, have the opening of the jump ring at the top. Let's just refocus this. Okay, 2 pairs of pliers. One pair of pliers comes towards you, another comes away. So what you're doing is basically making a hook. You don't want to unround the wires. Just take it through there, attach your chain, and then using your pliers again, these are bent nose pliers, and I absolutely love them because I can get into small spaces. And what you're going to do is just bring both those ends together so that there is no air between the 2 ends. Air is an escape mechanism. So that piece of chain is joined. Let's do it again. I've got another open jump ring here. It doesn't matter what order if you put the chain on first, like that, and then through the jumper, or through the bead like that, and then close the jump ring by bringing both ends towards you. Oops. Sometimes they just, there we go. Okay. There's the pendant. It's not a 5-minute project, definitely, but it is a good project to learn how to do brick stitch. Okay, and don't worry, I mean, if it's not perfect, you can just help push it in place here and there, and you're all set. So the only place you actually see thread is between where the gap is, just in there. Everywhere else, you don't see the thread, it's all inside. Any questions? I know you're still working on it. Any questions about how to finish it, how to end it?
I'm done.
Good for you, Jaga. Oh, it looks wonderful.
Thanks.
Okay, how's everyone else doing? You guys are good?
Ooh.
Ooh, is that a good ooh or is that a bad ooh?
looking at
Cindy,
Cindy.
that looks great.
I'm looking at Cindy's.
Wonderful,
Wow.
Cindy. How are you doing, Vera? Oh, that looks wonderful. I'm going to spotlight you, Cindy, just so we can see it. Oh, go ahead. That looks great. Good for you.
It's a little bit bigger, but that's the beads I had. So thank you so much. This was
You're
fun.
quite welcome. So, I mean, if you wanted something smaller, just use smaller beads. And that way they could be a set of earrings.
Pamela? Here's-
Yes. Okay. Vera, let me take a look.
I did seed beads.
Well, see, that's a very different look, isn't it?
Very, yes.
Yes.
I'm just getting my ends in.
It's good.
No, go ahead. That looks
Good.
great.
Nice.
Good. So who else was making it along with me? Anyone else? Okay.
Pamela, if you're using like little beads, 10 or 11, how would you hook them up? Because there's no jump ring that will go through.
What you can do is use a circle of beads.
Loop.
So if you have a, if you're using like size 11s and you had size 15 beads, you could just do a circle of beads on one side and dangle it that way.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But to use a thread would kind of, like to try and squeeze it in between the heart, the seed beads wouldn't really look.
It's going to look a little more rustic.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think what else would work. Actually, if you have access to French wire.
To what
and
wire?
put your- it's called French wire. It's what's
Okay.
used for pearl knotting.
Okay.
And it's a very fine coil of wire. You can cut off just maybe a 3/8 of an inch, not very long.
Yeah.
And then put that onto your needle and set it so it goes around the top bead.
Yes,
Don't
okay.
go through it again. And that will create just sort of a little metallic finish on it.
Okay.
Okay? And then travel and do it on the other.
French
So,
wire.
okay. Any questions? Any other questions?
I have a
What-
question, but it's not related to this, if everyone's done with this.
Any questions about this topic or any other questions you want to ask about beading in general? I'm just going to switch cameras here.
I'm still on the spiral bracelet.
Yeah.
Spiral rope bracelet. What would you use? Like if I'm using, I made one and I loved it with the number 8 beads.
Yes.
So would you use a wire or the thread?
Is this to create the stitching?
Yes, to stitch it with.
I would use thread or
Okay.
fire line.
And what kind of thread? What size?
Any size. There really is not much difference in beads in thread sizes.
Okay.
Yeah, really isn't much difference.
Okay.
D tends to be thicker than B, but it all depends on the manufacturer.
I'm using Wildfire right now, and it's
Wildfire is very similar to Fireline, and you can go ahead and use Wildfire.
and it's 0.008.
I don't know how they measure. Yeah, I think that's like a 6 or 8 pound. Did they give you sort of a poundage size?
No, they don't.
Okay, 0.08 is fine.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good width.
Okay, perfect.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Next week, next Monday, we're going to be learning how to do right angle weave. Yes, Indy, I know you're going to help. He rides around in my hand now when I work on a mouse, and he'll literally just ride around on here as I'm mousing around, and it's like, really, bird? So what we're doing next week, let me just switch over to the other camera here very quickly. Okay, so we're going to be learning right angle weave to create sort of what we call a dog tag pendant. It really, the right angle weave is this portion here. And it creates a fabric. We're going to be using size 8 seed beads. So we're going to create this fabric here. I'm just going to spotlight this so everyone can see it. And then once we have created our base, we're going to be adding some beads as enhancements. So it's a really good stitch that allows you to do enhancements. So to do this for next week, you'll need some size 8 seed beads. These are 4mm beads. You could use pearls, you could use drucks, which are these perfectly round glass beads. If you have 4mm fire polish, that's what these are. They have little facets on them. And you're going to need some size 11 beads. And you're going to be using, oh, indeed, size 11 beads sort of in here, where you've got some of the enhancements as well as in here to create that loop. So that's what we're going to work on next week. Fireline is good for this.
So we need size 6, size 11, and 4mm beads.
Size 8, not size 6.
Oh, size 8.
Yeah, size 8. Yeah. And you do want to use a Japanese bead as opposed to a check, because the Japanese beads are just a little bit more consistent and they'll give you a better result. So if it says Miyuki or Toho, those are Japanese brands. Okay, any questions you might have for me, whether about this project, beading in general, anything you would like to learn? Doing cancel the spotlight. I'm just going to put you back onto, put my camera back on here. Okay, I'm back. Anything you'd like to know? We're good? Okay, we're good. If you have any questions, by all means, oh, you guys are quite welcome. I'm just reading a comment here. Yeah, if, you know, there's been many times when I've been doing beading and sometimes you just have to set it aside and give yourself time to absorb it. So as I say, next week we've got this. I've submitted some more classes to Joanna and she's going to have more up there. So we're going to learn things like flat spiral. We're going to do something called, oh, what's it called? It was in my brain. What I call fire and ice. It's a bracelet. We're also going to do, we're going to bring in the holidays a little early and I'm going to show you how to do a netted, we're going to be doing a netted snowflake. Okay, and that you can use any size beads for. Size 6, size 8, even size 11. 6 or 8 is going to make it easier for you to see. I'll be using size 6s, so you'll be able to see it quite well. And then I've got some other stuff coming up in October, and they're going to be on there as quickly as possible. So, okay. If there's no other questions, no, we're good? All right. I want to thank you for joining me tonight. And, oh, yes, and did you want to say goodbye? Yes, okay, there he goes. So yeah, join me. More things are going to be coming up in October. And if you have suggestions about what you want to learn, perhaps for November and maybe into some holiday themes, send me an email, PamelaKearns2019@gmail.com. And I'd be happy to take a look. And I think that's going to be, my contact information is going to be given to you when you get a copy of the video to the link. Okay? Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
take care. All the best.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.
Oh, Indy says bye too. Okay.
Good night.
Bye-bye. Thanks.